Hello, so in this video I'm going to be going over the basics of lighting within Eevee and Cycles, along with the differences between Cycles and Eevee as it pertains to lighting. Essentially there are very few differences as they're meant to be very compatible systems. Anyway, let me just go up here, and this video will assume that you know the basics of Blender's interface. So if you haven't already, please go watch those videos, and please get used to Blender's interface before watching this. Anyway, I'm going to File, New. I'm going to reset to the default project. I'm just going here and add a cube at the right scale. Just for reference, I am using the scene units Imperial, and yeah. So that means each one of these each one of these markers is a foot. If I change this to inches or something like that, that doesn't actually change anything. It only changes the size at which you write over here. So I'm just going to put it back to 2 feet. Anyway, I'm going to press G to move it vertically, and then press G and then Z to lock it to that axis, and type in 1 to move it by 1. I can also, snap to increment. Anyway, I'm going to go in, press Shift-A to add, and add a plane, and scale it up with S. I'm going to very quickly, in case you're still not completely used to Blender, and its shortcuts, I'm going to go up here and enable screencast keys. So now in the bottom left here, you'll be able to see anything that I'm pressing apart from mouse movements. Anyway, so within Blender, there's within Blender Eevee, there's two different viewing modes. There's the Workbench engine, and then there's Eevee. The Workbench engine is basically a stripped-down version of Eevee that only reflects environments, and then there's Eevee, which is the full rendering engine. Eevee itself works as a game engine, but its lights are converted over when you start rendering in Cycles. Cycles is a ray tracing engine, much like Arnold. In fact, they're more than extremely similar. So, yeah, I'll just show you in this video how to add lights, and then in the next video I'll go over scene settings and a few other things. And then that's going to be it for the basics of lighting. I'll probably also go over HDRIs and how you add them, and some other minor stuff that's related but not entirely necessary to start lighting a scene. So, let me go over here, change the cursor location, just so I can, not add it in the middle of the cube. So you can see not add the lights in the middle of the cube is what I'm trying to say. Pressing Shift-A, I'm going to go under Lights, and we can see that we have 4 types of light. We have a point, a sun, a spot, and an area. What's not listed here is also the environmental texture light. So the environment itself gives off a small amount of gray light from the background. Anyway, I'll show you how to manipulate that in a later video. Anyway, so going under light, I'm going to just click point, and that'll add a point. To go in between those rendering engines, if you go up in the top left here, you can see viewport shading and Eevee. So this is Eevee, this is the viewport, not viewport shading, this is the Workbench engine, and then if I go over here to solid view, you can see that. If I press Z, that's our hotkey for this shading pie menu. I'm just going to go down, and we're going to look at the material preview. This material preview ignores lights and uses an HDRI in the background, as you can see right there. We don't have to worry about that now, but that may come into importance later. So if I press Z and go to Render View, this will show me a rendered version of the scene with the current settings and the scene and everything else like that. That shadow erroring, I'll show you how to fix. Actually, I believe, I'll show you how to fix it in a little bit. But you can see one of the big things with this view is that it doesn't have gizmos. So to bring those back, if you go up to the top right here, and you click on Show Overlays right there. It looks like a circle with two circles on top of each other. It'll show everything to do with the scene while still rendering in Eevee, in the full Eevee. So anyway, if you can see, I'm moving around this light, and it's projecting shadows and all that stuff very loosely. However, because I have two lights in here, the primary light is, this light that has more energy outputting is primarily determining the shadow density. Anyway, I'm going to get rid of that so we can only see the small shadow, and you can see all that sort of stuff. From here, how do we go in and how do we edit the settings of the light? If I go over here to Object Data Properties, which when you have light selected looks like a little green light bulb, click on that, you can see that we get a list of settings. These settings are fairly basic, and a lot of stuff is determined by the scene settings rather than the settings on the light itself. So on the light itself, I can control the power of it. This wattage indicator is not mathematically correct, in that this wattage is based on how much energy is actually thrown out, and not the actual wattage of the light bulb of the light bulb itself. And that's because different types of light bulbs have, different conversion rates between the wattage coming in, the lumens of lights coming out. There's a conversion formula between lumens and wattage of power, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. We may be using an add-on that fixes this and shows power in lumens instead of wattage, which can greatly increase the scene accuracy. But anyway, that aside, you can see that you have radius. On the point light, the radius does not affect shadows and shadow depth. Or actually, wait, it seems to. I'm sorry. So, we currently have soft shadows enabled, and this glitch is a glitch that very rarely happens within Blender, but I'll show you how to fix it in a moment. This glitch with constantly re-rendering environments, shadows, and how that constantly flickers. Anyway, so in here, if you increase the radius, and because soft shadows are turned on, and that's not a menu in here, that's automatically on in the scene menu properties, you can see that it softens the shadows. We have a problem here, though, where these shadows are not lining up with the object. To fix that, if we turn on contact shadows, you can see it creates contact shadows, and we have settings playing with the distance of it, and all sorts of other fun stuff, like bias and thickness. When we have multiple lights, that'll get to be a little bit more important, but yeah, for some reason it's determined by light and not by scene. It's kind of odd, but anyway. We also have custom distance. Well, sorry, we have shadow, in which you can look through and you can change settings, but I find the shadow to be fine where it normally comes in. Of course, you have bias right here. Bias is the distance right here. However, there's a small gap it doesn't fill, and that's why we use contact shadows. Anyway, custom distance, if you checkmark that, it'll allow you to limit the distance artificially as if this was not a real light, because it's not a real light, rather than dealing with the wattage. Keep in mind the scene scale of this. So this cube is 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, and then each one of these is another foot. So, and there are some lights where you have to use custom distance rather than the default quadratic fall off, just for looks. Anyway, going in between the different modes, we have sun right here. Sun defaults to 2 strong. But let me set that back to 1. And you can see that it just works as an environmental sun. You've got this little gizmo which allows you to point it looking directly at an object. It's also interesting to note that well, this sun is not physically accurate and does not change in color across the scene. We're going to have an add-on called like Starlight something, or let's see if I can find it, that automatically creates an environmental sun and creates very good results in that. Anyway, next we have Spot. So this is Spotlight. Its default is too soft, but you can see that it has all the same settings as with Maya. If you grab this gizmo, you can drag it around. If you grab this blue gizmo, you can focus and defocus the light, like that. You can also go over here and you can change it right here, and you can change the blending mode as well, so how soft this spotlight blends. You can also click Show Cone, and that gives you a viewport display of the cone itself. However, I find that to be rarely useful, and so I usually turn it off. You can also have a custom distance that it clips at. This is not physically accurate, but you know, if you want to do things custom or if you need to tweak it very slightly, that's usually what you use. Also, contact shadows is automatically turned on. However, for this one, I need to increase the distance on the model. At times, you just have to go in, you have to play with the settings. However, there are only a few amounts of settings, so it's a lot easier to mess with than having to deal with Maya's like 13 different menus just for lights. Next, we have area. So an area light is a planar light like this that you can grab and scale the gizmo like that with, and it projects as a plane, or from a plane perspective. So if I zoom in, you can see, yeah, it limits itself like that. Sure, visually it makes sense. I'm sorry for being very bad at explaining this sort of stuff. And this glitch, once again, I'll show you how to fix it in just a moment. Properties, clip, start price, pretty much everything is the exact same with other lights. With this, you have a couple more controls, so you can change from a shape from a rectangle, or from a square to a rectangle, and then you can go in and mess with that scale like this. You can also change it to disc or ellipse. So whatever works for this area. In Eevee, we also have emissive materials, and that's something I'll go over in a bit, but that should be handled by the texturing team because they're doing a lot of shaders. However, you might need to go in and tweak them, so that's why I'll show you that. Anyway, thank you. In the next video, oh wait, sorry. With this glitch, it's just a bug. There's been a bug report, but I haven't seen any updates on it in a while. So to get around this, all you do is you just drag out a new window, remove the old window. Whoops. Sometimes in Blender you get to this state where you're constantly pulling out more windows. So if you right-click on this window, click Join Areas, you can join areas down. And now if I go into rendered mode, it's fixed now. So it's got a limit on how it updates. You can see this is normal behavior, and because I have soft shadows turned on, it renders the light from multiple different angles and cuts the shadow like this. Alright, I believe that's all, and in the next video I'll go over scene settings, and then the video after that I'll go over fog, and then after that HDRIs, I think, and a couple more things. Alright, thank you.